This is not about motivation, and it's not about self-help. This is about forbidden knowledge. 21 dark persuasion tricks so powerful that manipulators hope you never discover them. These are not the surface-level tactics you've heard 100 times before. No, these are the hidden weapons, the subtle mind games used quietly in conversations, negotiations, relationships, and even politics. And the scariest part? You've already been exposed to them. At work, at home, online, and everyday interactions, people have been nudging your decisions, shaping your emotions, and steering your choices without you ever realizing. These tricks don't rely on strength or authority. They work because they bypass logic and speak directly to the hidden levers of the human mind. Manipulators don't want you to see these tools because once you do, their power dissolves. You'll recognize when someone is setting a trap. You'll notice the invisible strings being pulled. You'll catch the tone, the pause, the carefully chosen word that was never accidental. And when you see it, you can't unsee it. In this video, I'm going to reveal 21 of the most dangerous persuasion tricks. Each one is a blueprint of how control is stolen, and more importantly, how you can defend yourself against it. Because once you understand the game, you can't be played the same way again. Part 1. Subtle setups. Before manipulators go in for the kill, they set the stage. They don't push you into decisions right away. First, they soften your defenses, build an illusion of control, and create just enough confusion so you start second-guessing yourself. These are the subtle setups, the opening moves in a game you didn't even know you were playing. Let's break down the first 5. Trick 1. The false neutral. One of the most effective ways to influence someone is to pretend you have no stake in the outcome. Manipulators use the false neutral by acting like they're just giving advice, playing devil's advocate, or being objective. But here's the trap. Neutrality is fake. They're not neutral at all. They're nudging you toward a decision while making you think it was your idea. For example, a coworker might say, "I don't really care which option we pick, but option A seems risky. I guess option B is safer, but hey, that's just my opinion." On the surface, it looks balanced. In reality, it's engineered so you dismiss one choice and lean toward the other while believing you weren't influenced. The false neutral works because humans trust people who seem impartial. If someone looks like they don't gain anything, we drop our guard. But the truth is, their agenda is just hidden under a mask of fairness. Trick 2. Information flooding. Sometimes manipulation isn't about hiding information. It's about drowning you in it. Imagine a car dealer rattling off specs you don't understand, or a partner in an argument throwing out so many half-truths and examples that you can't keep up. The brain can only process so much before it shuts down. When you're overwhelmed, the easiest way out is to stop resisting and go along with what's being pushed. This is called information flooding. It creates exhaustion, not clarity. And in that exhaustion, you surrender. Politicians use it in debates. Salespeople use it in pitches. Even friends use it when they bury you under facts to make their side look stronger. The trick isn't about convincing you logically. It's about overwhelming your mental bandwidth until your only option is compliance. Trick 3. Strategic silence. We think persuasion is all about talking, but some of the most dangerous manipulators know silence is deadlier than words. Here's how it works. They make a point, then they stop. They go completely quiet, holding the silence longer than is comfortable. Humans hate awkward silence, so our instinct is to fill it. And when we fill it, we reveal more than we planned. We soften our stance, and sometimes we even talk ourselves into agreement. Example, you say no to a request. They just nod and wait. Seconds feel like minutes. That weight of silence pushes you to explain yourself, justify your decision, or even backtrack. Suddenly, you're negotiating against yourself. Strategic silence works because most people mistake talking for control. But silence is a vacuum, and people rush to fill vacuums with their own compliance. Trick 4. Time pressure framing. This is not the usual sales urgency of only 24 hours left. This trick is far subtler. Manipulators use time itself as a weapon by framing situations as if you must decide right now, when in reality you don't. Think of arguments where someone says, "If you don't give me an answer tonight, I'll assume you're against me." Or negotiations where you're told, "If you walk away, the deal's gone forever." The key is not the deadline itself, it's the pressure. By compressing time, they stop you from thinking. They know that rushed minds make emotional decisions, not rational ones. Introverts especially are vulnerable here because we like to think deeply before deciding. Time pressure. Framing steals that advantage, forcing us into corners we would never choose if given space. Trick 5. The Trojan compliment. This trick is as old as language itself. Hide control inside praise. At first, it looks like flattery. You're such a generous person. I can always count on you. But hidden inside the compliment is an expectation. The unspoken message. If you don't do this, maybe you're not generous after all. The Trojan compliment works because no one wants to contradict the positive image painted about them. Humans crave consistency. If someone tells you you're reliable, helpful, or loyal, you feel pressure to prove them right, even if it means agreeing to something you wouldn't normally accept. It's not just manipulation, it's identity theft. They borrow your desire to be seen positively, then weaponize it against you. These first 5 tricks may seem small, but that's the danger. They're not meant to knock you down in one blow. They're designed to soften the ground, to set the conditions where bigger manipulations can flourish. The false neutral disarms your suspicion. Information. Flooding overwhelms your logic. Strategic silence pulls you into talking yourself into submission. Time pressure. Framing steals your space to think, and the Trojan compliment hijacks your identity. By the time these 5 are used, you're already half persuaded before the real persuasion even begins, and manipulators know it. That's why these subtle setups are always the first act of the game. Because if they can get you off balance here, the emotional hooks that follow will cut much deeper. Part 2. Emotional hooks. Once a manipulator has softened the ground with subtle setups, they move to something far more dangerous: your emotions. Logic can be debated, resisted, or fact-checked, but emotions bypass all of that. They cut directly into the subconscious. And here's the truth: no one is immune. Whether it's guilt, fear, jealousy, or sympathy, manipulators know which levers to pull, and once they do, you'll find yourself obeying without even realizing it. These are the emotional hooks that tie invisible strings around you. Trick 6. The exclusivity trap. Humans crave belonging, but more than that, we crave special belonging. Manipulators exploit this by making you feel like you're part of an exclusive club, someone they've chosen above the rest. They might say, "I wouldn't tell this to just anyone, but I trust you." Or in business, "You're the only person we're offering this deal to." The exclusivity trap works because once you feel chosen, you'll do almost anything to protect that privilege. You don't want to lose your special status, so you comply, even when the request crosses your boundaries. It's not about flattery. It's about control through scarcity of intimacy. Trick 7. Emotional debt. This is manipulation disguised as gratitude. It starts with a small gesture, buying you lunch, giving you advice, helping with a problem. But later, that tiny act becomes a massive debt you're expected to repay. They'll say, "After everything I've done for you, you can't do this one thing." Suddenly, the balance shifts. You feel guilty, even though their favor was never equal to the demand. The power of emotional debt lies in the human urge for fairness. We hate feeling like we owe someone. Manipulators inflate that feeling until you surrender just to escape the weight of guilt. Trick 8. Strategic vulnerability. One of the most shocking manipulations is when someone pretends to be weak, not strong. They might confess a personal struggle, cry in front of you, or share a painful story. At first, it feels intimate, even brave, but the timing is calculated. Their vulnerability isn't random. It's deployed when they want you to lower your defenses or agree to something you normally wouldn't. For example, during an argument, they suddenly reveal, "You don't understand. I've been battling so much, I can't take more." Instantly, you shift from resisting to comforting. You forget your position. They've won. Strategic vulnerability isn't always fake. It can be exaggerated truth, but either way, it's weaponized to disarm you. Trick 9. The jealousy switch. Jealousy is one of the fastest ways to control behavior. Manipulators provoke it deliberately, flipping a switch inside you that makes you compete for their approval. In relationships, it's subtle. "Oh, someone else complimented me today." At work, it's sly. "You know, another colleague was willing to take this on." Jealousy forces you into action, not because you want to, but because you don't want to lose. The manipulator doesn't need to demand compliance. They just need to hint that someone else could replace you. The genius of the jealousy switch is that it makes you fight yourself. You sabotage your peace of mind, chasing validation they carefully withhold. Trick 10. The sympathy hijack. Humans are wired for compassion, but manipulators know how to twist that kindness into chains. When caught doing something wrong, they pivot to pity. Instead of apologizing, they say things like, "You have no idea what I'm going through right now," or "Everyone's always against me." The goal is to shift the focus away from their behavior and onto your empathy. Suddenly, you're not holding them accountable, you're comforting them. This works especially well on people with big hearts. Empaths become targets because manipulators know sympathy overrides logic. If you feel bad for them, you won't punish them. And if you don't punish them, they win. Trick 11. Emotional anchoring. The last emotional hook is one of the most subtle, connecting their request to a strong emotion you already feel. Imagine you're happy about a win at work, and someone slides in with, "Since you're in such a good mood, can you help me with this?" Or you're scared about losing something and they say, "If you stick with me, you'll never have to worry again." The manipulator doesn't create the emotion, they hijack it. They anchor their persuasion to whatever you're already feeling. And because emotions are contagious, you associate compliance with that feeling. It's why salespeople offer special deals right after telling you a success story. It's why politicians tie policies to fear or pride. Once anchored, the emotion does the convincing for them. By now, you can see the pattern. Manipulators don't just attack your logic, they pull on invisible threads tied to your heart. The exclusivity trap makes you crave special treatment. Emotional debt makes you feel guilty until you repay. Strategic vulnerability disarms you through pity. The jealousy switch forces you into unhealthy competition. The sympathy hijack turns compassion into weakness. And emotional anchoring welds decisions to your strongest feelings. These aren't surface-level tricks. They're psychological hooks that wrap around your identity and emotions until you can't tell where your choices end and their influence begins. And here's the real danger. Once an emotional hook is planted, you don't even realize you've been manipulated. You think you acted freely. You believe the choice was yours, but it wasn't. And just when you think you've caught on, manipulators take it even further by weaponizing authority and the invisible pressure of society itself. That's where we go next. Part 3. Social shadows. If emotions are the strings that tie you to a manipulator, society itself is the stage where the play unfolds. Because what's the fastest way to control someone? Make them fear what others think. Humans are tribal creatures. We want acceptance. We dread rejection. Manipulators know this and use the invisible weight of social pressure like a weapon. These next tricks don't just target your emotions. They use the shadow of other people to keep you in line. Trick 12. The whisper effect. Lowering your voice might sound harmless, even polite, but in persuasion, it's deadly. When someone whispers, you instinctively lean in. You give them more attention. You feel like they're sharing something secret. Manipulators use this to create false intimacy. By speaking softer, slower, and almost conspiratorially, they trick you into thinking you're part of something exclusive. The whisper effect bypasses skepticism because you're busy focusing, listening harder, decoding the secret. And here's the subtle twist. Once you lean in, you're already physically yielding space. That micro-surrender sets the tone for psychological surrender. They don't need to shout, they don't need to dominate, they just need to whisper and let your curiosity do the rest. Trick 13. Isolation play. Imagine you're surrounded by friends who support you. Now imagine one by one, they start disappearing from the conversation. Suddenly, the only voice left guiding you belongs to the manipulator. That's the isolation play. It doesn't always mean literal isolation. It can be emotional too. They might criticize your friends, subtly plant doubts about family, or imply, "No one else really understands you like I do." The goal is simple: cut you off from backup. Once isolated, you're easier to influence. You can't fact check, you can't seek support, and you don't feel safe challenging them. Cult leaders use this. Abusive partners use this. Even corporate politics weaponizes it. When you're isolated, your entire reality can be rewritten by a single voice. Trick 14. Consensus mirage. Humans hate being the odd one out. We look to the group for cues on how to behave. Manipulators exploit this by creating the illusion that everyone agrees, even when no one actually does. In sales, it sounds like, "All my clients love this package." In relationships, everyone thinks we're perfect together. At work, the whole team is on board. You're the only one holding this back. This illusion of consensus pressures you to conform. After all, if everyone else agrees, you don't want to look stubborn, foolish, or difficult. The consensus mirage works because most people don't actually check. They assume the crowd is real, and in persuasion, assumption is everything. Trick 15. Selective disclosure. The best lies aren't outright falsehoods, they're half-truths. Manipulators reveal just enough information to make themselves look trustworthy, while hiding the parts that would make you run. They might share a flaw to seem honest, but it's carefully chosen. They might admit to a mistake, but one that makes them look noble. They disclose pieces of themselves strategically, creating the illusion of transparency. The genius of selective disclosure is that it flips suspicion. You think, they've been open with me, they must have nothing to hide. Meanwhile, the truth is locked behind closed doors. It's not about lying, it's about curating reality. Trick 16, reputation leverage. If you don't fear losing something, you're harder to control. That's why manipulators weaponize your reputation. They don't threaten your life, they threaten your image. They know you want to be seen as kind, loyal, smart, or strong. So they'll corner you with lines like, "You wouldn't want people to think you're selfish, right?" Sometimes it's direct blackmail. Other times, it's subtle guilt tripping tied to your identity. "I thought you were different from everyone else." The reputation leverage works because we live in constant awareness of how others perceive us. We don't want to be labeled negatively, and when someone hints that refusal could damage your good image, compliance feels safer than risk. This is why politicians fear scandals more than mistakes. Why employees go along with bad decisions to look like a team player. Why friendships rot, because no one wants to be the one who looks disloyal. Reputation is fragile, and manipulators know how to squeeze it until you break. At this stage, you've seen how manipulators don't just attack you. Directly, they weaponize the crowd, the whispers, and the fear of rejection. The whisper effect pulls you into false intimacy. The isolation play cuts away your allies until you're exposed. The consensus mirage tricks you into following an invisible crowd. Selective disclosure convinces you they're honest while hiding the rot. And reputation leverage forces you into obedience out of fear of what others might think. These aren't tricks that happen in the shadows of dark alleys. They happen in workplaces, homes, classrooms, and relationships. They thrive in environments where people want to belong, to be accepted, to maintain an image. And once you see them, you'll notice them everywhere. But manipulators don't stop at society. They go deeper, straight into the subconscious, planting ideas so subtle that by the time you realize what's happened, it's already too late. That's where we go next. Part 4. Subconscious invasions. If emotions tug at your heart and social shadows bend your behavior, then the subconscious is the final battlefield. This is where manipulators gain their greatest victories, not by forcing, not by begging, but by planting seeds so deep in your mind that you believe the thoughts were yours all along. The tricks you're about to hear are the most dangerous of all, because when someone masters these, resistance feels impossible. You're not just persuaded, you're reprogrammed. Trick 17, pattern planting. Ever noticed a phrase slipping back into your head days after someone said it? That's no accident, it's pattern planting. Manipulators use repetition like a sculptor's chisel, carving thoughts into your subconscious. They weave subtle phrases into conversation again and again until they feel familiar, and in persuasion, familiarity equals truth. A politician repeats a slogan until you chant it. A partner repeats, "You always overreact," until you start doubting your own emotions. A boss repeats, "We're a family here," until you stop questioning exploitation. Pattern planting doesn't convince you instantly, it programs you gradually. By the time you notice, the idea has already grown roots. Trick 18, micro-expressions mirroring. This one feels almost supernatural. Ever wonder why some people feel instantly trustworthy? Often, it's because they're mirroring your micro-expressions, tiny facial cues that flash for a split second. A manipulator watches you carefully. When you frown slightly, they mimic. When you smirk, they mirror. It's so subtle you don't consciously notice, but your subconscious screams, "This person is like me." And when someone feels like us, we drop our guard, we trust, we follow. The danger is, the manipulator doesn't need to say anything. By syncing with your expressions, they bypass logic completely and gain access to the primal circuits of trust. Trick 19, the false horizon. Humans can endure almost anything so long as we believe the end is near. Manipulators twist this instinct with what's called the false horizon. They dangle the illusion that relief, reward, or closure is just around the corner. They tell you, one more step, one more favor, one more sacrifice, and you do it because you think you're almost there. Scammers use this when they say, "Just one more payment and your prize is unlocked." Abusers use it when they say, "After this rough patch, things will be perfect." Employers use it when they say, Work hard this year and next year you'll finally get promoted. The tragedy? The finish line keeps moving, and by the time you realize, you've spent years chasing a horizon that was never real. Trick 20. Choice inversion. One of the cleverest manipulations isn't taking away choice, it's inverting it. Instead of asking you, "Do you want this?" they frame it as, "Which option do you prefer?" Suddenly saying, "No," isn't even on the table. For example, a salesperson asks, "Do you want the deluxe package or the premium?" A manipulative friend asks, "Should we meet at 6 or 7?" A controlling partner asks, "Do you want me to pick the restaurant or do you want to decide?" In every case, refusal is erased. You're trapped choosing between doors they built for you, never realizing the third option was walking away. Choice inversion feels empowering, but in reality, it boxes you in. Trick 21. Identity hijack. This is the nuclear option, the most insidious trick of all. Because when someone hijacks your identity, they don't just influence a choice, they influence who you believe you are. It works by framing behavior as inseparable from your character. You're a generous person, you'll help, right? You're not the type to give up, are you? A real friend would never say no. Once tied to your identity, compliance feels mandatory. After all, refusing the request isn't just saying no, it's threatening your self-image. The identity hijack rewires your sense of self so that obedience feels like authenticity. It's no longer about what you want, it's about proving who you are. And here it is, the darkest layer of persuasion, subconscious invasion. Pattern planting slips past your defenses by repeating until belief feels natural. Micro-expressions. Mirroring wins your trust without a single word. The false horizon keeps you running toward an ending that never comes. Choice inversion tricks you into picking between traps instead of escaping, and the identity hijack warps your self-image until compliance feels like destiny. These tricks don't just touch your mind, they rewire it. They don't just change what you do, they change who you think you are. And that's why manipulators guard these methods so carefully. But now, you've seen them. You know the whispers, the illusions, the traps, and the hijacks. And once you can see them, they lose their grip. Because the truth is this, persuasion is only dark when it's hidden. The moment you drag it into the light, its power fades. You've just walked through 21 of the darkest persuasion tricks ever designed. Tricks that thrive in whispers, in doubts, in the spaces where logic loses its footing. You've seen how manipulators twist your emotions, bend social pressure, and slip directly into your subconscious until resistance feels impossible. But here's the truth that changes everything. Awareness is armor. When you know the whisper effect, you no longer lean in blindly. When you spot the false horizon, you stop running toward mirages. When someone tries to hijack your identity, you pause and ask, "Is this really who I am, or who they want me to be?" That pause is power. See, manipulation isn't about brute force, it's about invisibility. It only works when you don't recognize the game being played. But now you do. Every trick you've learned here is a flashlight you can shine on the shadows, and shadows cannot survive in light. But there's one more thing to remember. These methods aren't just weapons of control, they're tools of influence. In the wrong hands, they enslave. In the right hands, they protect. Because understanding dark persuasion isn't just about defense, it's about reclaiming choice. The next time someone tries to push, guilt, isolate, or corner you, you'll see the strings. And once you see the strings, you're no longer the puppet. You're the one who decides whether to cut them. So take this knowledge, not as fear, but as freedom. Because now you know what manipulators pray you never learn. Persuasion has no power over a mind that's awake, and that mind is yours.